Welcome. Ukrainian Media Center is functioning today. My name is Vasil Simachlao. We are talking about the thing that hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians zero in on when filling out their declarations. Why everybody is holding breath. This is the thing that Viktor Pavlushchyk, the head of the NACP, will talk about, and Yuliia Kulikova, the head of the NACP's Department for Comprehensive Control. I know that your message is that the service will be much improved. So what is it that you have come up with? Welcome. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for those who are joining us online, for the authorized personnel and everybody interested. In 3 days' time, Ukraine will celebrate the beginning of the reform of taxation. The parliament had approved a number of steps in that direction. Law on the prevention of corruption and the establishment of the NACP. And of course, very important steps were taken from 2014 to 17 to bring down the level of corruption in Ukraine and to shape the base for further anti-corruption reforms. It was then that the declaration institution was installed. We all remember how paper declarations were submitted to the bodies. In 2016, NACP instituted an electronic form of declarations. Of course, it was an ideal thing. Everybody knows that. But it was a major step forward towards the openness of the public service. The NACP has systematically been working on the improvement of the electronic declaration. As a result of the campaign of 2023, we have conducted a number of research. Now, the results are as follows. Many people said that they spent a couple of hours on filling out. 91% of the declarants meant that the prompts in the online declaration is very much helpful. Those prompts and helps are used as the following resources. The 71% and 40% of them said that they are taking advantage of that. Many people, as far as 40%, underline the section data and help for declaration, which helps us to receive information about yourself and your relatives who have opened their declaration in the DEAR program. What we are caring about are people that are declarants of Ukraine. Altogether, there are 800,000 of them. Now we've been introducing an autofill of the draft declaration. Due to that functionality, we will have the information on the assets of many people. It has been successful because of the uber important thing as the following things. Think back about 2009. The autofill is a way to interoperability, meaning that all the data will be fed into the general register. We have done a lot of work to make sure that today we would have 80 documents that are helping to fill out 209 entries. In addition, the declarant has the possibility to autofill data, and in case the irrelevant information has been detected, it can be changed. The digitalization of the documentation will help us in this hard time of ours of full-scale invasion. We are all under the threat of the documents being erased or damaged. I will give the floor to my colleague. Welcome. I'm glad to be here. Indeed, as the head of the agency had mentioned, everybody who has been dealing with declarations, and I as declarant myself was looking forward to making sure that this is a streamlined process. We are seeing the unprecedented declaration that I can ensure you that not a single country has such a Byzantine system. I've been working with that very closely, looking into the implementation of the mechanism and how to check those declarations. So I take full responsibility by saying that this is a unique product. And for you not to think that this is a simple thing to do, I will walk you through the evolution of the declaration. Let me remind you that until 2016, it was a paper declaration. It was quite simple. And of course, the documentation was kept in the files of the specific officer or public servant. We couldn't trace the changes in the status of the assets of the servants, and it was promoting corruption. Since 2016, the Unified Electronic Declaration was declared to be the only way to go. It was a unique process and a difficult one, but it had opened the door and possibility for the society to control the representatives of the government bodies, those who are authorized to represent the state and local self-government. Of course, in essence, it was a difficult process, but it was implementing a very important mission. As the body who is the holder of such a register, we saw it as our aim to streamline, to tweak the process. And as of today, as you can see, we have implemented not only the judicial part of the process, we have brought it down to every step to be done. There are supplement legal materials, explanatory notes, there are prompts in the register itself. In the form itself, the names and titles have been made very easy to understand. So we did care about the thing altogether. Step by step, we began to gather information to come up with a draft declaration, leading to a point where you get your information about the relatives and the family. Why is it a difficult story? When we have perused all the entries of the declaration, it turned out that only 31% we receive in an automatic way, meaning that in the ideal case scenario, only 1/3 of the information will be helpful to the declarant, him or herself. We then looked into the digitalized information then. You see, the Ministry for the Digitalization, because the whole country is going through the process of digitalization, we have researched the issue, and we thought that we could bring 31% to 75%. As the head of the agency mentioned, it required 20 joint documents. Believe me, this is a very difficult process. You're dealing with the ministries of the Interior and the Taxation Authority, Ministry of Justice, not to mention others. So these bodies have been licensed by the Ministry of Justice. It's a separate process. And technically speaking, we have transferred data, which is a lot of work to do for the bodies who hold the information. These are the steps that have led to today's presentation and today's product. Hopefully, it will be assessed by the declarants in a positive way. I truly believe that they will appreciate the whole process. What we have here is a magic button called autofill. Now, to dispel the myth that you do that in one click, I would like to tell you that for this thing to be a reality, 3 steps are necessary. A declarant should be aware that we are gathering information at his or her will. This is not a must. If a declarant doesn't want to share such an information, he or she can skip this, and altogether they are able not to take advantage of this. Those who are willing to use it, perhaps first-time declarants, they have no experience or expertise in what information should be fed in or information that should be declared. They have the option, and this is the first step. You've got to choose the period for us to gather information from different registers and to define the family members. We can do that for him or her because only they will know what members of society were his close family. You see, a lot of declarants are authorized to postpone the submission of declaration. It may be the case that some of them will face the necessary step to submit 4 declarations at the same time, and for them not to stumble and not to be confused, this option, of course, will come in handy. Once you have defined a period and members of your family, it has been implemented with the help of the Ministry of Digitalization, and this is a breakthrough history. When you are working in your draft through the mobile program DEAR, you have to authorize and to underline the information that, yes, I am a member of this officer and I agree to my information being gathered. Now, let me tell you that the declarants are required, and it will be a good thing for the declarants to have the concession of their family members. In other words, if I have sent a message to a member of my family and I haven't warned them in a 24 hours time, this question will disappear. In that case, you are facing 3 options. If you are following this process through, it is being done very fast. You have the confirmation. This confirmation goes back to the register. And then once you click on the button, feed in the information. And then you will see what national agency will be authorized to gather information, because we are authorized to do this automatically. This is step number 1. It is called data gathering information. Second important step, once you have received a document with information we have gathered for you, what are you supposed to do next? You have the option to select either all the objects for transfer, where you've got select all option. Once you are doing this not for the first time, you have the previous declarations, so you don't have to transfer all the items. Once the information is authentic and it is true, the only thing you've got to do is to check it. And once it's there, you are not supposed to click on the transfer all the button. Once you have received or have acquired new assets, for example, your income, you select all and your all income. And for example, you have acquired a new item of assets, for example, a vehicle. And then you click on the button, yes, I have checked, and I would like to transfer this into the declaration. The last point is this. I confirm that I have checked up information. It's all relevant. It can be transferred, and indeed it is being transferred to the draft declaration. For you not to make a mistake, you know, there are a lot of information in declarations. For the declarant not to copy the same items, we have implemented the option which is called checking duplicate entrance. Then you have to click the bottom, check out the information that is duplicated. What does it relate to? In the register for the material assets, it's one point. In the declaration, there are 6 entries. So technically, you can't transfer from one text field into 6 cells. That's why the declarant manually select all the relative titles or names. Accordingly, once you have gone through these important steps, you have requested information, you have selected what information has to be transferred, you've checked the authenticity, and you click on the button Review. In the review process, you cross out the duplicated information, then the declaration is virtually ready. What are the benefits of this process? Of course, the benefit for the declarant is the time saving. We think it will be appreciated. And secondly, it's about the minimization of the risks. A lot of declarations are now going through the comprehensive control process. And sometimes an asset that is worth 100,000 hryvnias, it's now worth 1 million, and we can for sure have to check where did that money come from. We also underline the point that once you have seen the mistake in the declaration, you can delete it, because such a mistake will be repetitive from year to year. What are the advantages that we see for ourselves as a government agency? By minimizing the number of mistakes, we can focus on the risky declarations, because we have taken on board the risk-oriented process. These mistakes really can distort the whole picture. Once we know that mistakes aren't there, we know that we will increase the efficiency of the comprehensive control process. On a wider stage, once we see more realistic, the pure data on the declaration, it will be easier for the society, for the law enforcement officers to assess and to single out the risk areas. Once the declaration has been filled out, ideally with no mistakes, then they would have fewer questions to our officers. What we believe the society will get from this function. Now, of course, the public will get an objective information on the status of the declarants to see how their asset declarations have changed. It will also streamline the process of looking into the risky operations, where we can research and look into some specific stories. And of course, selection process. The public will know who are people that can be trusted, that our future can be trusted to. This is the advantages that the public will receive. They will get a more authentic and realistic information about the elected people that have been entrusted with running this country. In a nutshell, this is the essence of it. Can we now follow up with the questions? Now, on a practical thing, one of the advantages you mentioned was the time-saving factor. I remember when it all started, how people were sitting on the edge of their chairs. Some people said that it would take 24 hours for them to fill out. How time will the declaration submission and filling out take? In essence, there are different declarations. The second factor is whether you are experienced or you are a newbie. Let us talk about a newbie, a new declarant. They don't have expertise or experience, previous declarations. This function will cut the effort and provide a 100% guarantee that here they will be helped until the date of the information that is missing. And if you want to add up 25% of the information that is not digitalized, information on the cash available, the incomes that we have not had, that is to say, all declarants must understand that this process cannot be postponed until the last day, being aware that digital information is not available 100% time. I believe that it'll take 1 hour to fill out. If a declarant is an experienced one, and he or she is only checking up the old information, I, for example, was checking, of course, that you did a crash text on yourself, didn't you? And I checked my information. In my case, I took as a background the 2024 declaration, and I transferred my income. It would take me 15 minutes time. With that, I've got some assets, and I checked the authenticity, and I transfer with one click that information into my incomes. The part 12 is pecuniary means. Of course, there are people who are actively engaged in different processes, and entrepreneurs, their wives, you see, and wider family. It's a more complicated thing, because there you've got to look into the authenticity, the relevance of the information process. But we forecast that it'll halve the time needed. This night, or yesterday, the information and that option became available. Now we are gathering feedback, what the tweaking could take place. Since 1st of January 2025, a new declaration campaign will be installed. And we want to make sure that people will not get tired. And we want to provide security belt to exclude any mistakes. Let us then follow up on this new campaign, and then we'll go politics and managerial things. A new campaign means that you will inform people how that decision will be implemented. How will you interact with the officers authorized by your agency of prevention of corruption? They are their evangelists, shall I say. It's a good question. Now, the anti-corruption authorized personnel, of course, are the backbone of our activities. They are called to explain both simple things and complicated things. With no doubt, this product has been drawn for the interest of the declarants. As Yuliia has suggested, the declarants must self-consciously check the objectivity of the information. Now, the beneficiaries, in the first place, are the declarants, and it'll empower us to bring down the number of people calling our call centers. And people will be able to turn to us on the question that they can't solve themselves. On the part of the preliminary questions. Yuliia has mentioned that something called some cases. As I said in my introductory notes about the data that we have chosen as a background, the benchmark, but we believe that the time for the declaration submission will be cut in half. Do we expect any trainings, any advertisement campaigns? You see, it does matter. If it used to take 7 to 8 hours, then it'll take 2 or 3 hours. Now, of course, all the information will be added to all the parts of the declaration. We call it additional information, the knowledge base where you can get the information, the steps, and the order of filling out. There will be also a video course available for them to look through a video how the autofill option works. Now, the work with the anti-corruption officers will be there in our training courses. When the service will be available, to use the service can start today. It was launched last night, so we can take advantage of it today. What you can take advantage of today is this. I will advise you on the following. Once you want to test the draft declaration and see whether the information is relevantly transferred, you can do that on the drafts that we have formed for the year 2023. The 2025 declarations for the previous year is a different story. This document can only be formed once per year. In case you have been testing and flirting and playing with it on the 1st of January, in that case, you will lose the opportunity to submit information on your income for the fourth quarter. There is a reference point there. Unless it is information performed prior to the February of the current year, then you will not be able to update your information on the last quarter of the year. You should be aware of this, about this proviso. Another proviso is that some registers cannot be working for the information until the 31st of December. They can feed and give you information until today. If you want to submit information today, you will see that you have to be very concentrated not to duplicate it. This is why I mentioned the trainings. But we want people to be aware that this takes your concentration. This is a risky process. Let us go back to the story. Who were the developers? How long did it take? Who were the developers? I will tell you about those who were developing. After the presentation of today, we have to say thank you for the Parliament who have cooperated with us, in particular the head of the special committee. Then the Ministry of Digitalization and the Ministry for Economic Transformation, they provided the interoperability factors. They have made sure that our number of 31% information available digitally went to 75. GTA was a donor, of course, and a private developer was also a stakeholder. Now, the information I heard was about the register, who is sharing the register with you and who are not authorized to share the register with you. I mentioned that there are 14 registers, and very important divisions are the real estate, in simple words, real estate, the register for land plots from the land state register. Here is a proviso I would like to mention. This information can be duplicated from two registers. You have to be very attentive here. The Justice Ministry, with their registers, and by the way, we are working on the information for the minors in your family, because from your previous marriages you might have children who are still minors, and somehow these people drop out of the registers. The register for corporate rights and beneficiaries, the public entities, and the Security Commission information, the information on the state taxation on your income, information from the pension funds about your pensions and social benefits, information from the Ministry of Internal Social Work, about the internally displaced persons. We have integrated data for your older vehicles, information about the vehicles, the agricultural vehicles or machines that you have, your planes or ships. It is important for the farmers, because farmers have a lot of worthy agricultural machines once they don't declare that. It's very important for us to know the worth of it. Perhaps I might have dropped out a number of things. And by the way, one of the major things is the migration register, meaning a personal information about the declarant and the family of the declarant. It's the most complex thing because there are a lot of data there, the identification numbers, date, birth dates, place of register, foreign, international passports. I hope that declarants will appreciate this. You don't have to do that manually. All the information will be transferred in a digital way. So a lot of work has been done on that with the state migration service. It's a sensitive issue because it contains personal information. So there was a number of sensitive things to be aware of. My last question about the families. You see, you have, through the DIA program, you have to ask your members of your family their concession. Now, situations differ, including situations in different families. People might be staying abroad or elsewhere. Can this be a barrier? If it is a barrier, how do we overcome this? We want to have information, but there is not always that you can get all the relative information that you need. Important conditions for a person to use this program. Now, first of all, children until they are 14 years old. Until you are 14 years old, you cannot use the DIA program. This program must be available on television of the older members of the family, of your parents, or there are other reasons the person cannot install such a program, then you cannot use this program. Once a member of the family cannot share the information, the declarant must be aware that we will only gather information on those who have fed in information into the DIA program. You mentioned different situations in different families. The lawmaker has defined it clearly when and where a declarant must share information that he or she is aware of in the volume they know. There is an option to say that the member of the family has not provided information, which means that your information will not be comprehensive. However, once you have submitted a declaration, you can provide within a month a rectified information. If the time frame has exhausted, you can provide information, an additional one, that we will take advantage of when we do our comprehensive control. So there are ways for the declarants to fill out declaration once, even if you don't have full information about the family members. Let us have the questions from the floor. Svetlana Skvachuk from Ukrinform. A clarification. Do you plan, and if so, in what way? How will you improve the electronic cabinet, electronic office of the declarant? We will be working on this. The legislation has been improved, and partially we have implemented partial transfer of the digitalized information. Let me draw your attention to this. 24% of the information that cannot be transferred now does not mean that it will never be transferred until some divisions, for example, the material assets, the arts, antiques, valuables. Of course, this is an information that will never be digitalized. But the trend now is that many holders of information prefer digitalization, and we are keeping track of that. Once the information is available in the digitalized form, for example, agricultural machinery, we have received this information from what we found in the Excel forms. This is a realistic project. We are keeping track of that and will be increasing the volume of such information. As far as the quality of information, this is a much, much more serious and deeper thing. We have a special anti-corruption program involving the register holders from the government bodies, and they're taking steps now to make sure that the information in the register is not only digitalized, but it must be relevant and meeting the criteria to be publicized and to be in the public domain, to be interoperable with other registers as our register. But this is a shared interest for all the government bodies, to make sure that the publicly available data and data on private assets are differently used. This is one of the tasks that the government is facing, to simplify this process by way of increasing it. The more information we have, the more information will be digitalized, more information will be transferred into the register. Do we have more questions? I have a question. Do you take away the breadth of yourselves? You see, your agency was analyzing the registers, and now what I see is there is nobody to check or to look into, because you've done that before. One way or the other, the resources of the National Agency for Prevention of Corruption are not limitless. You see, we are talking about the factor of doing our work easier, meaning that we will free up the resources of ours, not to deal with the everyday mistakes, you see, when we have mixed the entries numbers, where you have land information in the section of the pecuniary things. We are called to do other things. And Yuliia has mentioned that comprehensive control is what we have to pay our attention to in the first place. Do we have more questions? If there are no more questions, we will be drawing up this presentation. This is a very useful information. How did you mention 700,000 declarants? I think they will be glad after your presentation. Viktor Pavlushchyk and Viktor Kulikova from the National Agency for Prevention of Corruption were talking to us. We'll see you later. Stay tuned.